Great. Welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to have an incredible panel of experts here today. We are going to hear from leaders in the space, in the alternative protein space, in the mycoprotein space. And I just feel really grateful that we're going to have a couple hours with these leaders. I'm going to quickly go over our agenda for today. So I'll do a brief intro to Protein Directory. We'll hear from our speakers. So each speaker has prepared a really brief intro to their work. They'll share a bit more about their technology, what they're working on, and then we'll have time for a discussion. Following the discussion, we'll bring in some audience Q&A. Really want to hear from you, so if you do have questions, feel free to post it in the comments on the right-hand side of the stage, and we'll get to them towards the end of the event. We'll wrap up this event with a networking session. So if you've been to any of our events before, you'll know we like to wrap these up with a speed networking round. It's a really great way to share thoughts about the event and build community. So if you're free towards the end, feel free to stay on, and I hope to see you there. So brief overview of Protein Directory. We're a global database and resource center for all things alternative proteins. We have a global database. We host events like this. We have blogs and articles, and we publish work about alternative proteins and the leaders in this space. Our partner organization is Bright Green Partners, and we're a global consultancy agency with a dedicated focus on alternative proteins. So at Bright Green Partners, we get a bit more into the weeds, we get a bit more technical, and we have written a couple reports. We've collaborated with the Good Food Institute, and we've recently launched our expert network. So through this network, you can be connected with over 2,000 different experts in the alt protein field. So if this is something you're interested in, feel free to reach out to me after the event. And again, here are our speakers. Again, I'm really excited to speak with each of them. They're all doing really important work in the alternative protein, mycoprotein space. We'll hear from a lot of different people working in this industry. So Paul, who's the CEO, we'll have Serji, who's head of science, Anna, who's a co-founder, Jeff, CTO, and Quentin, Loth, who's the head of production at Bosque Foods. So we kind of are going to get a glimpse of a lot of different aspects of the mycoprotein industry. And that being said, here's a couple themes that we'll cover. So we'll be talking about technology, what makes mycoprotein technology unique, and what challenges are associated with scaling up. We'll talk about the health benefits of mycoprotein, and then also the benefits of mycoprotein in terms of food security challenges. And finally, we'll also chat about funding and growth and kind of orientate the mycoprotein industry in the broader alternative protein landscape. Here's a quick reminder to post your questions in the chat. And without further ado, I want to welcome Serji Abad, head of science at Libre Foods, to the stage. Welcome, Serji.
Welcome. Can you see me well, and the presentation as well? Yeah, I see. So welcome everyone. Thank you for having me. It's a really nice opportunity to me to come out from the labs, because I'm generally hiding at Libre Labs, and I'm not used to do this kind of thing. So I'm really happy to share with you some of our insights, and also open and happy to discuss with my colleagues and the people in the chat. So saying that, I come from Libre. Let me see if you can see how the screen is moving, right? Can you see the screen moving? Yeah, I checked myself, sorry. Yes. So Libre Foods is a biotech company, basically commercializing a platform of fungi-based products to replace meat, to favor this transition from meat eaters to something healthier and environmentally friendly. So we are working on harnessing the power of fungi to bring this their benefits to us. So at a glance, we are based in Europe. The company was founded in Barcelona in 2021. We are offering a multi-product fermentation technology platform. So we are focusing on fungi-based fermented products, to offer different possibilities. We would discuss about this later for sure. And we are following a model based on product market fit with business to business and to customer. And we are rather focused on commercializing our products apart from investing a lot on our R&D. We launched the first fungi-based bacon in EU, and we are currently having quite a lot of success with this product. We will talk just briefly later. And we are right now, actually our CEO last week showcased our mycelium-based whole cut chicken breast. So it's ready to scale and to be commercialized. So entering into the fungi, let me zoom out a little bit. I hope you can see it well. So it's, to the best of our knowledge, it's the only allergen-free bacon in the market. Of course, it contains a high protein content. It has much less calories than that current competitors, and of course the meat, the bacon from meat from animal source. It's very low in saturated fats. It's a unique fiber source, which also brings some health claims, and of course it's based on all natural ingredients. Since we launched, we had a 90% customer retention. It's something we are really proud of, and it's letting us understand and learn a lot from our customers. And we are quite fast company. Within almost a year, a little more than a year, we launched our bacon. Here I have some nice pictures from different recipes from our customers. So I hope you can have a try if you visit us in Barcelona. And then the next product we develop, and we are really proud of this, is regulatory approved mycelium-based chicken breast, the first one in Europe. And of course, it's low in saturated fat, no added sugars. It's a source of fiber because it's essentially made of mycelium. It's more than 80-90% mycelium. And of course, it's a source of good protein coming from this mycelium. And here we have some pictures of our Libre chicken in different recipes. And that's it. So I'm happy to discuss about our technology products and about our fungi and mycelium after the presentation of my colleagues.
Thank you so much, Serji. We'll circle back and have some questions for you later. Now we're going to invite Paul Shapiro to the stage. Paul is the CEO at Better Meat Co. based in Sacramento, California. Welcome, Paul.
Thanks, Marlana, and thanks to everybody for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are. It's really wonderful to be with all of you. So thanks for taking your time to chat about all things fungi. I am enthusiastic about it because I am a fungi fanatic. And the reason is, frankly, because the planet is not getting any bigger. Humanity's footprint on the planet is getting a lot bigger, but the planet itself is not getting any bigger. And one of the primary ways that we leave that footprint is through our food print, principally in the amount of meat that we eat. Oh, sorry, I'm just reading comments that are coming in. So the point is, the planet isn't getting bigger, our footprint is getting bigger, and primarily because of our food print. And we all know, if you're listening in on this webinar, you probably already know that it's no longer a secret that raising animals for food just takes a lot of land, a lot of water, a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, and more in order to produce all of that meat. The problem is that we're not going to be farming the moon. We're not going to be farming Mars. We have only one celestial body to farm. And there's 8 billion of us on the planet today. And we're projected to have another 2 billion added to human population within the next 30 years. Not only are those additional 2 billion people going to want to eat meat, but the 8 billion who are currently here want to eat more meat, despite the fact that so much money and other resources have gone into advancing the animal-free meat space. Unfortunately, meat demand continues to rise, not fall. Meat demand is going up in America, in Europe, but it's really going up in China, India, Brazil. Basically, all the places it's going to matter the most, meat demand is going up, not down. So what can we do? Well, of course, we can hope that people will just switch to plant-based foods. That would be wonderful. Lentil soup, hummus, bean and rice burritos. I love those foods. I wish more people would enjoy them too. However, people seem to really want meat. We have hundreds of millions of people who are escaping poverty and entering the middle class, which is of course great, but it means that a lot more people are going to be demanding meat as a side effect of that expansion of the middle class. And so it would be kind of like saying, well, I wish that people would walk more or bike more, but people seem to really like driving. And so that's why it's important that we make cars that don't rely on fossil fuels. Similarly, it's important that we make meats that don't rely on the factory farming and slaughter of animals in order to not only do right by those animals, but also to do better for the planet and for public health. So just in the same way with energy, there are a variety of ways to create energy without fossil fuels. Wind, solar, geothermal, nuclear, and more. Well, there's lots of ways to recreate the meat experience without animals. One of them is plant-based meat, which is nearly all of the alternative meat that's on the market today. And that's made from things like soy or wheat or pea, which all have in common one thing: they are all plants. There are some limitations to plants, though, mainly that they are really far away from animals on the evolutionary tree. So if you got plants over here and animals over here, well, they're really far away, which is why you have to conduct a lot of processes on plants to make them look and taste like animals. So if you think about, let's say, a Beyond Burger, you grow a field of peas, you harvest the field of peas, you then have to mill it into a flour, but that flour is very low protein. So you've got to strip out the fiber, strip out the fat, concentrate it down into a pea protein concentrate, like a pea protein powder that an athlete might take as a supplement, which now is high protein, but still not textured like animal meat. And so then you have to conduct extrusion, which is a fancy way of saying lots of pressure and lots of heat. And that changes the molecular structure of that protein from being globular, like a plant protein, to being stringy, like an animal protein. Then you have to still add maybe a dozen or more ingredients to it, and then you get something that is like a plant-based burger. Now, that's why plant-based meat is typically way more expensive than animal-based meat, because of course peas are much cheaper than beef, but you're not using whole peas. You're using a tiny fraction of the pea, and you're conducting a lot of processes to get to that point. So there are some people who say, well, listen, there's some deficiencies of using plants. They make great products, but it's hard to compete on cost, and there are some deficiencies. So why not go to the animal kingdom and just grow meat from animal cells, called cultivated meat? That is a great technology, very promising. I've written a book about it. It's called Clean Meat: How Growing Meat Without Animals Will Revolutionize Dinner in the World. Yet it is still a technology for the future, not for the present. Even the most well-funded of these companies, Upside Foods, recently said in an interview that they don't expect to have their meat on supermarket shelves until the year 2030. 2030, 7 years from now. So if that turns out to be true, that means that hundreds of billions of animals will be raised for food between now and then, of course. And even when they do have their meat on shelves, it still will not be enough to displace any sizable portion of the number of animals who are raised for food. So if you don't want to use plants and you don't want to use animals, obviously, if you're on this webinar, you know that leaves one other kingdom, the F word, fungi. Why would people like to use fungi? Well, because remember our evolutionary tree, you got plants and you got animals. Fungi are not right in the middle. They are right by animals. Evolutionarily, they are way closer to us than either one of us is to plants. So if you think about it, animals, or let's say, take plants as an example, they put themselves in the sun and they photosynthesize. That's why they're green. Well, just like we do, we have to go out and search for food and digest it. That's what fungi do. Similarly, we breathe in oxygen, we breathe out CO2. Fungi do, and fungi do the same. So plants, we know, breathe in CO2, breathe out oxygen. Well, fungi breathe in oxygen, they breathe out CO2. The point of these two examples is simply to say that fungi are way more similar to animals than they are to plants. And so it's not surprising that mushrooms have been used for centuries, in fact, for over a millennia, as meat substitutes. The problem, of course, with mushrooms is that, one, they're not a perfect mimicry for meat, and two, they don't have a lot of protein. So that is where mycoprotein comes in, or mycelium, the root-like structure of fungi. At the Better Meat Co., what we do is grow mycoprotein, or mycelium, inside of large stainless steel fermenters that looks like a craft brewery, except instead of brewing alcohol, we are brewing protein. And the product that comes out of our fermenter on its own, in its natural whole food unprocessed state, has a meat-like texture, that stringy type of animal type protein that I was talking about earlier. And you can get that not through isolation, fractionation, centrifugation, purification, extrusion. You get it merely through fermentation. And at the end of that process, which takes less than one single day, from the time we inoculate our fermenter to the time that we harvest our fermenter, is less than one single day of growth. You get a product that is not only extremely meat-like in its texture on its own as a single ingredient, whole food, unprocessed mycelium, but it also has more protein than eggs, more iron than beef, more zinc than beef, more potassium than bananas, more fiber than oats, and it naturally contains vitamin B12, which is typically lacking in a plant-based food. So you get all that you want from meat, which is the texture, the nutrition like protein, iron, and zinc, but you don't get the things you don't want from meat: saturated fat, cholesterol, animal cruelty, environmental degradation, and more. And so this is why those of us who are speaking on this panel, and hopefully many of you who are in the audience on this panel, are so enthusiastic about the role that fungi can play to sustainably feed humanity into the future without destroying the planet and tormenting animals in the process. We believe that by emphasizing the role that fungi can play, yes, in addition to plants and animal cells, that we can create a better food future, a food future in which we don't have to rely on the slaughter of animals in order to satiate humanity's meat tooth, so to speak, but rather we can have a fermentation-fueled future where people can enjoy all the meat that they want, but without so many downsides associated with it. Just in the same way that we want people to be able to have all the energy they want through clean, renewable energy like solar and wind and geothermal, etc. We want people to eat what they love, but do it in a way that has a much lighter footprint so that we can feed the billions of people who we know are going to exist on this planet and who are going to want to eat meat, but in a way that we can all feel a lot better about. So I'm excited to talk more about fungi. I'm very passionate about it, and I look forward to answering any questions or offering further commentary about why and how we are going to build a fungi-fueled future for the meat industry. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Paul. Also, I'm really loving those pictures behind you. They're making me hungry.
They are, all of them are a minimum of 80% mycelium. So I hope, Marlana, that you'll get to try them sometime. We're in the Bay Area. You can come on by and see us.
Will do. Thanks, Paul. We'll see you in a little bit. Next up, we're going to have Anna, co-founder and CPO at Tempty, based in Denmark, share a bit more about their work there and what Tempty is up to. Welcome, Anna.
Hi, Marlana. Thank you very much for the introduction. So yes, my name is Anna. I come from Tempty Foods. We are a food innovation company that is creating the third generation alternatives to tofu and meat. By now, we're all aware that we need to reduce our meat intake to fight the climate change. But in the context of Europe, even though more than 40% of consumers state that they want to reduce their meat intake, the research shows that they're still struggling with finding the satisfying alternatives to do so. Currently, most of the products on the market are focused on mimicking meat. But after talking with thousands of consumers in Denmark, our impression is that actually 9 out of 10 want something new. they often find direct meat replacements too processed and unhealthy. Chefs in canteens are also trying to reduce the serving of meat, but they often struggle with keeping up with creating innovative food that is plant-based and that consumers would choose over their meat option. Just like this carrot dog that was actually served in one of the canteens in Denmark. And in Tempty Foods, we want to change this. We have a product called Tempty. It's a third-generation alternative that focuses on taste and nutrition instead of mimicking meat. It has no E-numbers, and it's based on mycoprotein instead of soy or pea. It's simple to prepare for anyone. Tempty is a combination of mycoprotein and other plant-based ingredients like lentils, quinoa, carrots, and seasoning. And it's high in protein and fiber and low in saturated fat and sugar. By now, more than 10,000 consumers have tasted it and love the taste and texture. And in terms of sustainability, when compared to minced beef, Tempty is estimated to produce 34 times less CO2. And if every Dane was to consume our product tomorrow, instead of minced beef, that could actually lead up to saving CO2 equivalent to 350,000 flights from New York to Copenhagen. And from our business model, we have probably the most different than the rest of the companies here. We actually have suppliers of all the ingredients, including mycoprotein. Then we outsource the production in Denmark. And we sell to B2B market through food service. We position ourselves as the next generation alternatives as we focus on not mimicking meat and also diversifying consumers' diet by including alternative protein. And in the last year, we were focused on the test sales, and this year launching into food service and building up the sales volumes in the B2B market in Denmark. In 2024, we plan to expand abroad and diversify our channels. And this is just one of the way how we serve Tempty right now throughout Denmark. We are still quite a small team, and we have the background in food innovation, nutrition, food technology, and business, and have the help of advisors who are guiding us through this way. We like to say, stay tempted, our products are coming.
Thank you so much, Anna. I'm really interested to keep chatting with you, and especially about like the stance that Tempty is taking, that you're not creating an analog food, you're kind of creating this next generation mycelium-based protein. So thank you so much. We'll hear from you soon. Next up, we're going to hear from Jeff, the CTO of MyForest Foods, and the company is based in New York. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here, and happy to tell you about my company, my forest, and my bacon. So if I hit the down key, that works?
You should be able to click it and just
okay, perfect. Thank you. Sorry about that. There we go. Alrighty. So I'll start with the founder. So the MyForest Foods is a company that is owned by Ecovative, and Ecovative is a technology company that was started by Eben Bayer, who is the real guy, the real deal. So had a vision for creating a better world. He wanted to solve the problem of packaging initially. Thought that styrofoam was a horrible thing, that we shouldn't be throwing it into landfills and into the earth, and came up with a way of creating something that was better and sustainable and renewable, and built a business around this mycelium-based packaging, and then realized that mycelium actually had a lot more capabilities than just being a source of packaging, and started to look at other ways to capitalize on that, and got into the food space. And so I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second, but we've gotten a number of accolades and awards for the work that has been done already, and and hope to continue to do that. So Eben, fantastic person. So next up, so it's really all about the mycelium. So we grow mushroom mycelium, the root that typically is underground, up into the air, and we call it air mycelium, and it's a patent process, and it took about 10 years to develop, but we have it working today, and it's pretty amazing. So you can take a look at the pictures there. It's kind of looks like marshmallow a little bit. It's got a similar texture to that, but we take that growth and turn it into delicious bacon. So there's a picture there of Eben standing in the door of one of the farms. I'll show you a picture of the inside there in a second here. But so we have built this all. So we built this all here in Albany, New York. We've got a farm. One of the beauties of what we have here is completely scalable. So not only can we do it, but lots of people can do it. And like here, I'll just click next here to show you what the farm looks like. So we've got a number of these rooms, so chambers where we are growing mycelium, and you can actually see this is just straight off of our website. So each one of these racks is growing a pillow of mycelium, and then we have a process for harvesting that and turning it into panels, we call them, little blocks of mycelium that then we process into fantastically delicious my bacon. So let me show you that. So I think Sergey said that you have the only bacon in the EU. So made of mycelium. I guess we probably have the only one here in the US, but it's probably 95% mycelium. The only other ingredients in there, we've got some natural flavors, we've got some salt, we've got some sugar. It's pretty super simple, about 5 ingredients, and absolutely tastes delicious. So Paul had mentioned a lot of the benefits of mycoprotein, so we don't have to go into those again. But we've got a fabulously delicious product, and we're hoping to bring it to a lot more people than have been trying it so far. So this is a package. Maybe you've seen it. So we're in distribution in New York City, and in a little bit here up in the Northeast in New Hampshire and Vermont, but hoping to expand it to a lot more markets. Nice crafty type packaging here to bring home that farm to table goodness. And then just thinking about what it is that's different about our bacon. So we've got I think in this category, and maybe this will be part of one of the questions that we talk to in general, and I'm not trying to put shade on anybody's products here, but in general, I think that the plant-based products just don't taste as good as some of the meat alternatives, and it's probably one of the reasons why so few people are really willing to just like make that jump completely. I would say that our product is absolutely delicious, and we were just at the Plant-Based World Expo and got lots and lots of comments. Actually won an award for best plant-based alternative meat. Pretty excited about that. So delicious product, smells great when you're cooking it, tastes delicious, has the same texture of bacon. It's crispy, it sizzles when you're cooking it. It looks like bacon, and it tastes fantastic. It's healthy, so we don't have any of the allergens either. So no allergens, no nitrates, 99.9% less cholesterol than pork. We're certified plant-based. We're working on organic or keto. Kosher is pending. We've got, again, the allergens that I mentioned. Complete protein. We got fiber, amino acids, low calorie. There's only 50 calories per 2 slices, which would be 1 serving. And because it's mycelium, and this, I don't think this is a regulated claim that we can make, but it literally is a cup of vegetables in a serving. So if you started with the raw mycelium, chopped it up and put it in a cup, you would have a serving of vegetables in a serving of bacon. How amazing is that? And completely sustainable, uses a lot less land, a lot less water, and there's a lot less CO2 that is generated than the traditional pork market. And we have, a fabulous story about our founder, and our mission, is just make the world a better place. And on top of all of this, so in the way that we grow this product, we grow it on a substrate, so some typical mushroom growing habit and or practice, and we actually can use that again. So that gets like upcycled for additional mushroom growers to use and process. So super sustainable product. And then just quickly, here's our team. So we have a new Chief Executive Officer, Greg Shushuk. Sarah Marie is our Chief Marketing Officer. I'm the Technical Officer. Christine is our Chief Commercial Officer. Adam is the Head of Director of Operations. Deb Batista, whose picture is not here, is our new retail salesperson, and we have a new finance person as well. So the company is growing, and we're excited. I'm excited to be here and excited to be a part of the conversation that we're going to have here coming up soon.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff. And last but not least, we'll be bringing in Quentin Loth from Bosque Foods. Quentin, welcome. Quentin, your speaker is off.
There we go. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Real pleasure to be here on stage and talk about mycoproteins. I'll be sharing a little bit about Bosque Foods and what we're doing. We're based in Berlin. And here we go. Let me share my screen. All right. Cool. Let me make this a little nicer. All right. So we're Bosque Foods. We're a team of scientists, engineers, biotechnologists, microbiologists based in Berlin. So when we looked at one of the biggest impact we could have on climate change, food came first. Our founder, Isabella, was always interested in fermentation, and she looked at how she can have the biggest dent in climate change today. Like Paul mentioned it very well earlier, we know that the food industry system is the primary source of greenhouse gas emission. I'm not going to go over all of the problems that you guys already know, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But when looking at this, we looked at, okay, well, what's available today for people to change their diet? I like data, and this slide probably shows it a little bit. Apologies for this. Long story short, we know that there are protein alternatives today on the market, but we already know that they're not meeting consumer demands. So one of the biggest issues is price parity with animal meat specifically. And then we have health and nutrition, like we're taking care of with our products, and so are all of the other colleagues that presented earlier. We have taste and texture, which is a big deal as well. As well. So when we looked at this, at what's available, we have plant-based food, we have cell-based food. I'm not going to go back in describing what those are. Paul did it very well earlier, but we attach ourselves to a particular solution, which is mycelium. So what we're doing at Bosque Foods is unlocking nature's full potential for the food system with mycelium. I'm sure that all of those that are attending this webinar already know what mycelium is. It's the root network of fungi. And what we see with mycelium and the way that we grow it is that we can essentially reach a cost-competitive product that has the taste and texture parity with animal meat, and we know that is highly nutritious. So at Bosque, we essentially harness the power of this raw ingredient, and we create, at the moment, 2 products, but we're interested to go into more options. We create a chicken fillet and we create a pork fillet. So what the chicken fillet that you see on this picture is essentially over 80% mycelium. What's really interesting with the process that we have is that we can work with a side stream from the agri-food industry. I'll go over this a little bit later in this presentation. I first wanted to show you a little bit more about the products that we're putting on the market. But we've got our chicken fillet, we've got our pork fillet. And the way that those are produced is essentially with this very circular process where we essentially work with side stream from the agro-food industry as substrate that we inoculate and from which we grow our mycelium in our fermentation process. When that mycelium is harvested, it will be turned into very simple step into the end products that I just presented to you earlier. But what I want to drive the attention to, because I think that hasn't been described in that way in previous presentation, is the circularity of that process. The leftover substrate from that harvested mycelium can be used for many other applications. It can be used for energy, it can be used as fertilizer that will serve later for the agri-food industry from which we will derive our substrate. It can be used for biofuel, biomaterials, it can be used for insect feed. So this is just an addition to all of the great presentations that have been done earlier, but I wanted to drive this point home because I think that this is one of the clear advantages of mycoprotein as well, when you look at it from the entire picture that it sits on. So we're Bosque Foods. I'm very excited to talk a little bit more about what we're doing. I'm very happy to be part of this panel and see how we can bring you some of the knowledge and the technicalities of how to bring this product to market. And that's it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Quentin. I'm going to bring everyone back to the stage now. Welcome, welcome. Hello. I really apologize for any technical difficulties, but it looks like we're all here now, and I'm really excited to chat with you more and get into the weeds a bit more on your technology, your product, and more. So I think you've all sort of touched on this a bit, but why have you each approached production in your specific way, and what makes your production processes unique in the grand scheme of mycoprotein technology? We can maybe start with who spoke first? Serji, since you haven't spoken in a while.
Hello. I couldn't hear you part of the question. Could you repeat, please?
Yeah, if you could just, so each of you have sort of touched on technology already, but if you could maybe speak to your specific approach to technology and what makes your technology unique.
All right. Yeah, so of course, mycelium, we are just, besides maybe Tempty foods, we are all focusing on mycelium because of these special features you can get depending on how you grow them, how you grow fungi. So we really have different approaches. We are a rather young company compared to some of the companies in here today. And we have different processes to grow mycelium. Right now, we are focusing on two of them, and it's really I mean, it's depending on many factors on how you grow it. So it depends on the media or the substrate you grow the mycelium. It depends on the parameters and the conditions where you grow this material. But especially you have to focus on these features or these organoleptic and texture features that you are focusing. And this is probably the main advantages of our processes, because then you can bring a material that is itself has a good taste or a taste closer to meat, and also it's bringing some texture, very, very different texture compared to plant-based alternative, and in terms that also Paul introduced already, that are closer to the meat fibers than plant. So this makes this gives us a huge advantage when producing these products, trying to mimic or favoring this transition to have a meat-like experience. So it really the characteristics of the strains or the fungi you can grow and how you take care of them. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, there was also a question, and maybe this is sort of along the same lines for you, Jeff. You kind of covered your technology and process, but your harvesting and collection process, can you share a bit more how you harvest those trays and kind of what that technology looks like, whatever you can share?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm prepared to talk about our patented technology or like our soon-to-be patented technology for the harvesting piece. But I will tell you what's different about our mycoprotein technology, and it's the air mycelium. So, when you think about like a number of the kind of like the meat analogs out there are made of a ground dry material that they did and try to form into some kind of patty or ground type product, but we're growing these roots like straight up, right? So they're intertwined. It's like meat fibers. So we actually have the capability of creating a product that mimics a whole cut of meat. So which is quite unique to the category right now. So pretty excited about that. But in terms of your process question, we use equipment that's very similar to what mushroom farmers use. So which is why we're so excited about this business, because it's incredibly scalable, and scalable not just by us, by others. Like we'll be able to to license and export this technology to mushroom farmers that may want to decide to start growing mycelium and help the future protein needs of the world rather than maybe button mushroom. So excited about that.
Thank you, Jeff. Quentin, do you want to share anything else about the technology aspect of Bosque?
Yeah, sure. So I think from the different approaches that there are for growing mycoproteins, at least as far as I know, is liquid fermenters, probably similar to what Paul explained a little bit earlier in those bioreactors. And then you have solid state fermentation. So we focus more on the solid state fermentation, where we use various kinds of substrate. Some are organic, some are inorganic. And then we essentially inoculate various different strains of fungi. I mean, we select one, we don't mix them. We select one that will then ferment under specific conditions. And then we're able to grow mycelium. That mycelium then gets separated from the substrate and then starts what we call the downstream processing. There is very interesting area as well, because depending on the type of fermentation that you use, various types of downstream processing will give you various types of product and texture and taste and so on. So we at Bosque see a very big area for innovation in that specific part of the process, where the growth of the mycelium, whether it be from a solid phase or liquid phase, is something that is quite, let's call it ubiquitous, and as Jeff mentioned, very patented. Where there's a lot of interest for Bosque is in that state of downstream processing, and we think that there's a lot to be developed there, and this is one of the areas that we're focusing on the most.
Thank you, Quentin. Paul, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure. So, look, as has been mentioned, there's essentially, two different types of fermentation that you can use for mycoprotein production: solid state and liquid state. And they each have pros and cons, right? So the pros of doing solid state, like what MyForest or Bosque Foods are doing, or Libre, is to essentially not have to pay for all of this stainless steel that's a lot lower CapEx than what you have to do something like what the Better Meat Co. is doing. The detriment is that it just takes a lot longer. So, with fermenters, you can grow within hours, whereas if you're doing solid state, you're going to be talking 1 to 2 weeks in order to grow a batch. So, basically, you have the trade-off between CapEx and OpEx in these particular cases. It's worth noting that 99% of the mycelium market today is controlled by one company, Quorn, Quorn, which has been the trailblazer for many decades. We are all relatively new startups in this space. We're all small companies trying to do big things. Quorn has successfully scaled industrial fermentation of mycoprotein inside of fermenters that enables them to get to price parity with not just beef, but with chicken. So plant-based meat is virtually never sold at price parity with beef, let alone with chicken. And yet I'll show you something. Let me pull this up on my phone and I can show you. I was in London recently and I went to KFC because I heard that they had corn on the menu, and it's pretty cool. You can see here, corn is sold directly next to the chicken for the same exact price. And so, when we talk about like this holy grail of being the most convenient and being at price parity, corn's already doing it. Like they're literally on the KFC menu at the same price as chicken, and they're selling profitably. So I am a believer in all of these different types of mycoprotein production. There is another type where, you basically are doing what Nature's Fine does, which is a cool company. It's not on this panel, but they have a blend where they're basically growing in trays, like a liquid state tray that is a different type of fermentation. But either way, there's pros and cons to these different types of fermentation. And if you have, different companies have different strategies. So, a company like MyForest has decided that it wants to go with a solid state fermentation technology. That's great. The Better Myco is using fermenters because we believe that there are real advantages that if we can afford to do it, it is worth it. And we're inspired by corn and what they've done to be not only by far the most successful alternative meat company in Europe, and I mean, I think they have, like, last time I looked, I think they were at like $300 million in global revenue, which puts them pretty much on par with Beyond Meat, and making them among the biggest alt meat companies in the world and selling at price parity with the cheapest meat, chicken, not that bad. So I'm a big fan of corn and what they've done as a pioneering trailblazer in this space. And the difference between what a company like ours is doing and what they are doing is that they rely on one species, Fusarium venenatum, and we rely on a different species. And so if you think about plant-based meat, there's not, plant-based meat is not all one thing, in the same way mycoprotein is not all one thing, right? In plant-based meat, you've got soy protein, pea protein, wheat protein, and so on. Whereas in mycoproteins in the fungi kingdom, you have thousands of species. And my presumption is that each one of the companies on this call are each doing a different species, maybe even different genera of product. And so that leads to different functionalities, different tastes, different textures, different protein contents, and so on. And so just in the way that soy and pea have very different functionalities in a food product, it's possible that, like Anna, which they're using, from what I've read in news reports, is the corn product, the Fusarium venenatum, that's going to be, I presume, similar to corn because it's the same species. Whereas somebody like MyForest is using, I think, like oyster mushroom mycelia, which is going to be very different. And so they're both mycoprotein technically, but they're very different products.
Thanks, Paul. And Anna, do you want to, I was thinking about it while Paul was speaking about corn. Do you want to speak to, that Tempty's relationship with corn, as well as maybe what we can pivot a bit and talk about the benefits of partnerships in growing mycoprotein popularity?
Yeah, I think our journey as a company is also interesting. We actually met at the university, and we had the idea, we'll grow mycoprotein, then we'll make the food product, and it will all go smooth. But of course, it was supposed to be a 4-month course, and we had this ambitious dream. And then quickly we realized during the lockdown we cannot even use the lab. So we were, kind of stressed in the situation. Okay, we need to find a way how to actually even get to the food product. And what we realized was actually that our strength was more in the consumer side of understanding, maybe a bit neglected side of the market, where, we still believe there is space, of course, for all the products. We need to see more innovation happening, especially in terms of mycoprotein, and also not just in the meat alternative space, also in other categories. But yeah, so we in general focus more on the side of the technology of like getting to the texture which our consumers appreciate, and like how that reflects in terms of like the chemical properties. So even though of course we are not in the technology space of mycoprotein production, there is still space for patenting at the side of end product. Yeah. And I really agree with Paul in terms of, mentioning that mycoprotein it's a kingdom, and it would be really valuable once, we can all demonstrate like the variety and be very transparent about our sources of fungi and how the materials look like. So that, we educate consumers on the diversity and actually the benefits of each of the company.
Thank you, Anna. We're going to pivot a bit and kind of talk about the health implications of mycoprotein. All of you have touched on, your product and its benefits in comparison to conventional proteins, but I'm really curious about how you're navigating some of the chatter that's taking place in media, online, and specifically around, consumers' perceptions of these types of products, their connection to like being ultra processed, whether that's a fair categorization or not, and how. This is a bit of a long question, but I guess how mycoprotein has an advantage here, potentially, due to the fact that it's been around much longer than other alternatives. Paul's raising his hand. Take it away.
I'd offer a few thoughts on that, Marlana. The first is, mycoprotein has really not been around longer than some of the other alternatives. So, the very first recipe for plant-based meat was over 1,000 years ago in China, and it relied on wheat gluten and soy protein. So pretty much like what the plant-based meats are made from today, 1,000 years later, whereas mycoprotein is only decades old. Now, of course, people have been eating fungi for a very long time, but people haven't really been growing mycelium for the purpose of meat replacement for a long time. I'd also suggest that I believe that for the most part, this issue, the ultra-processed accusation, is not as much of a worry as some people may believe. Like, does anybody really think that when somebody walks into that KFC in London that I showed their menu, that they're thinking, okay, I can get the regular chicken or the corn chicken? Oh, it's ultra-processed. Like, that's just not on the mind of the person going into KFC. Like, does anybody think that somebody who walks into Burger King and they have the choice between a regular Whopper or an Impossible Whopper, that they're thinking about the number of ingredients or whether there's methyl cellulose? Like, I just think that these issues are important to a very, very tiny number of consumers. Now, it may be that those consumers are more inclined to buy plant-based meats, and so it'd be a concern for them. But once you get into the mainstream, the people going to fast food restaurants and so on, or buying food from Walmart, which is 25% of all groceries in the United States, I just don't think that it matters that much. All of that said, it is the case that the foods that all the companies on this call are producing are generally very low processed foods, very little processing at all, are whole foods, unlike soy protein concentrate or wheat gluten and so on. And they're packed with fiber, which is really, the thing that we should be concerned about. People think that they want protein, but no one on this call, nobody who is speaking or listening on this call probably even knows anybody who is protein deficient, let alone is protein deficient themselves. Yet the chance, if you're listening to this, the chance of you being fiber deficient is extremely high. In the United States, protein deficiency is basically at nearly 0%, whereas fiber deficiency is at over 90%. And so the benefit of mycoproteins, whether you're growing any of the species that are being discussed on this webinar, is that, you get the protein that you want, but you get the fiber that you need. And so we are growing a whole food. Doesn't have the fiber stripped out of it like a wheat gluten or a pea protein or a soy protein have had. And that is a real benefit from a nutritional standpoint. that you can have a package that is complete with protein and fiber, not only from a functional perspective as to what that fiber does when you're creating the product, which does have a really beneficial functional perspective, but from a health perspective, it's this thing that nearly everybody is deficient in. And fiber deficiency is associated, of course, with constipation, but really serious ailments like colon cancer and other really serious problems. So I hope that we reach a day where people aren't asking, oh, like how many grams of protein are in a product, but they're going to be asking how many grams of fiber are in a product. And the benefit of Mycoprotein is that you win on both of those fronts.
Serji, go ahead.
Can I add something? Yeah, I really like how Paul explained everything, because he covers a lot of things. He brings very nice topics on the table. So good job, Paul. Thank you. You are doing our job. Yeah, and you brought very nice topics. I mean, I believe one of them is price is what it matters at the end. No, it's true that we see with bacon, for example, that some customers pay attention to ingredients and they ask about clear information, clear list, and as short as possible. But at the end, yeah, we cannot make all of us this a reality. So having Myco food as an alternative, if we cannot match that cost, compared to alternatives or the animal products, right? So yeah, that's one. Maybe it's more my personal opinion, because at Libre we really care about all these other customers that pay attention to the ingredients. But I believe that to make this possible, we have to have really cost-effective processes to be able to offer something affordable, something competitive compared to the other products. And it's the real challenge to keep these futures that we were telling about, speaking about, this special texture and taste, and then having a really cost-effective and also a very good performing process to be more sustainable, because I see out there many processes being able to produce many types of mycelium, but you have an equilibrium between futures, cost, effectiveness, and then performance, because you can have a really nice process, very cost effective, but in terms of waste, we can end up generating the same amount of waste, even though, of course, we are working with mycelium, which is right in a better position in terms of sustainability. But yeah, I was just to highlight that price really matters.
And if I can just jump in there, from what Serji is saying, I absolutely agree that cost parity is like the key to get started. However, what's very important for the consumer, if you don't want it to be the key once, is to really reach that taste and texture. And so I think I haven't had the pleasure to taste all of your guys' products. I tasted the bacon at MyForest, which is really incredible. Jeff earlier describing how it sizzles in the pan, and I think you guys really nailed the smell of the bacon, which is really, really impressive. And I can only concur. Obviously, you want something to be cheap enough so that it can reach the masses, actually have an impact, because it's what we're trying to do at the end of the day. And you want to be able to nail that taste and texture so that people will keep buying it. Yeah,
can I just add to that? I agree 100%, right? Like, so Paul, you're right. Nobody's going into KFC and looking at the corn on the menu there and saying, oh, geez, I wonder if it's made with too many ingredients. But they're also probably just going to get the chicken, right? Like they went to KFC. So they probably want the chicken anyway. Nice experiment by Corn. I hope it works out for them. When I think of like our biggest challenges, it really is getting to that craveable taste, because you can get a lot of people to try your product one time. You got to be good to get them to buy it a second time, right? Like it's got to like exceed their expectations. So they're probably willing to pay the price. We do need to get to some level of price equity. But if you're not delivering that fantastic taste experience, they probably won't buy you again. And when I think of some of the health issues, so are some of the plant-based things made of a lot of ingredients? Yeah, they are. We have a very simple recipe, only 5 ingredients is great. But one of the things that I have noticed now as we're seeking alternative certifications is there's a lot of concern around natural flavoring. So like that's probably going to be like the next big issue for consumers. So I'm getting a lot of customers that are saying, you know, what's in your natural flavors and what are these things? Are you trying to cover something up? And no, we're not. You know, that's the way they go on a label. But you know, that it's very interesting to me that these flavors now seem to be a real hot button for a lot of people.
And maybe to say, like, from our side, I think where like the one difficulty is like even getting people to understand what mycoprotein is. So not necessarily people even being aware how it's produced. So it's kind of like very niche people knowing what it is. And then from explaining what at least we see is that explaining that it's produced through fermentation and that it comes from fungi, it still kind of elicits the positive response. Of course, it's still not enough in terms of them actually being, you know, educated in what it is. But at least there is now at the initial stage, we don't see negative opinions from the consumers.
Yeah, I want to add something else, if I can, Marlana. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so there is something I was discussing with my marketing team, and it's the term mycoprotein, right? Because I think it's also a responsibility to educate people, right? And I believe, maybe it's my perception, but I believe that sometimes we use mycoprotein referring to mycelium, so the whole biomass material, right? And then scientifically or officially, let's say, mycoprotein would be the protein isolated from mycelium, no, or from fungal biomass. So just bring that on the table. That I'll try myself to speak about mycelium or fungal biomass, because mycoprotein, might be understood as protein, purified protein, but I understand that this is the term we generally use. No, it happens with fermentation that. Even though we do aerobic growth, aerobic culture, so for microorganisms, we still bring the fermentation board, which is referred to anaerobic culture. So yeah, just wanted to add that because we were discussing that internally, and we didn't end with a conclusion about that.
If I can also add here, and that's exactly where I think like it's good to be in collaboration with, with the mycoprotein ecosystem, because it makes, for all of us, it's a challenge. How do we actually communicate clearly to consumers so that there is no misconception? What is mycelium? What is mycoprotein? Why a mushroom root suddenly does it taste like mushroom? So it could definitely benefit from us communicating together and coming to some conclusion in terms of how we all communicate.
The nomenclature issue is such an important one, and I believe that the Fungi Protein Association, which we are members of, could be helpful in this, because if you look at the companies in the space, first of all, none of them, to my knowledge, are doing a protein isolate from mycelium. Everybody is using whole mycelium products, and many of them just call it mycoprotein. That's what Tempty does. It's what Better Mico does. It's what corn does, etc. Some of them call it mycelium, like MyForest. I'm not sure what Bosque calls it or what Libre calls it, but I think you call it.
Yeah, also mycelium. Yeah.
Right. So, my experience is like people haven't heard of mycelium, whereas people really like the word protein. And so that's why we use the word protein. Mm-hmm. They don't really know what myco means. So they know they like protein, but I don't think mycelium is negative. And then you've got Nature's Find, which is the most well-funded of the startups in the space, and they did their own research, and they found that nutritional fungi protein was what they wanted to call it. That, to me, is surprising that people would like the word fungi or nutritional. They both sound like maybe they, appeal to vegans, but maybe not to meat consumers. But either way, that's what they're doing. You have another company, that's using the term mushroom root that was mentioned here, which is when you're dealing with a filamentous fungi like they are, it's not mushroom nor root, so it's a difficult thing to understand because it's not mushroom root. It's a filamentous fungi, which doesn't produce mushrooms at all. At the same time, that's what they like, and that's what they've found that consumers respond to, and so they're using it. So the point is, there's a lot of words out there: mycelium, mycoprotein, nutritional fungi protein, mushroom root, koji. Like all these companies have different names for it. And so while we all know, those of us who are knowledgeable enough about the space know that we're all using fungi proteins, to the consumer, it's pretty different. The question is, do they care? Does the consumer know that a Beyond Burger is made with pea protein and an Impossible Burger is made with soy protein? I doubt it. I doubt the average consumer has any idea that they're made from different plant bases. They just think of it as a plant-based burger. And I presume that they think of us as plant-based products too. And they don't care about the origin of whether it comes from the fungi kingdom or the animal kingdom or the plant kingdom or whatever. I think that they just want something that tastes good, is good for them, and is cost effective. But I do think that we would benefit from more polling and more consumer research, especially geographically. This issue has plagued the cultivated meat space too, where, you have some people calling it cultured meat, some people calling it clean meat, some people calling it cultivated meat or cell cultured meat or cell cultivated meat or craft meat. Like there's so many different names. They all apparently begin with C, by the way. I don't know why. But there's a lot of debate about nomenclature, and each company seems to be doing its own thing.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I think that really speaks to maybe one of the next questions we can go over, and that's what is the role that industry leaders can play in supporting each other in this industry? Geographical nomenclature studies clearly are really important. Also, having a more cohesive narrative around how you speak about these things could potentially be supportive. But what other ways can companies in this industry support each other, and both on the consumer side and maybe the technical side, without surrendering, intellectual property?
I can start.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. What about okay, sorry. That's one of the main, let's say, obstacles, no? The risks or the fear, the concern to leak your technology, your IP. So I believe we still have some fields of collaboration. For example, we were discussing about the education responsibility we have, and also, we can work on the standardization and certification, which is also related with this, but how to label, how to manage this kind of material. Also, lobbying and advocacy in front of governments and regulation bodies, especially in Europe, it's quite challenging. You already know. Maybe having shared testing facilities and also cross-licensing agreements, like Jeff mentioned, that some other companies could be using their technology. So I think still a lot of points where we can collaborate, and actually we are all part of the Fungal Protein Association that Paul mentioned already. So we are really on that, right? But it's really key to start with the education, and also trying to, let's say, solve these resource constraints we have, especially the small players like some of the people here today.
Quentin.
Yeah, I'd like to bounce on that, because I think Serji is hitting some very important topic here, which is around regulatory. So if you look at the difference between Europe and the US, you've got in both those parts of the world really, really exciting technologies being developed. Unfortunately, the US has a very different approach when it comes to letting some of those products on the market. So we were struggling here to get some of that mycoprotein out to customers in Europe, because you have to go through very long regulatory processes that are held by the EFSA, right? So Serji, actually, I'd be interested to know how you guys kind of like went around this, because I don't, or maybe you're using a different part of the mycelium or the mushroom to get your products out. But that was an interesting reveal that drew my attention to your presentation earlier. But I think specifically that's a point where the Fungi Protein Association, for instance, or something different than this, or this but more activated, could have an impact on those certifying bodies, so that Europe doesn't end up being, left behind of the few years that we have to actually make a dent into changing diets for the people, right? So that's, I think, one of the probable way that we could collaborate as industry partners to try and lobby or push for the EFSA or regulatory process to be potentially either faster or more funded, so that it can go through application faster.
And maybe here I can also mention one of the benefits that, our partnership with Corn actually does is the fact that, for instance, they recently managed to get Mycoprotein to be enlisted into Nordic nutrition recommendation as one of the protein sources, which, it definitely comes from like a background of them having so much research and doing the efforts of pushing for it, which ultimately makes it easier for us as a company, making mycoprotein-based product to actually spread the word and refer to something which comes from a national source.
I can add something of what we're doing at MyForest, and I have mentioned it previously. So we are the technology that we have is exportable. So mushroom farmers could become mycelium farmers, and so we have created a model that is scalable in great ways with minimal funding. So no one's going to need $400 million to build a fermentation plant to get going on a mycelium venture. We would just need some money to convert over a mushroom farm and and some agricultural equipment. So I think making what we do easier for more people and more businesses and companies to get involved in is I think be super important for us to as we want to grow this category and the plant-based products in general.
Thanks, Jeff. Paul, do you want to add anything? Or Serji, go ahead.
Yeah, I just I cannot tell much. I'm referring to Quentin's question. Of course, I cannot disclose, otherwise my CEO will kill me. But of course, we have been working with the EU authorities. I have some experience because in the past I've been working in the food enzyme industry. So we have to go through the same processes, and it's also really, really long, like 3, 4, 10, 5 years. If it's feed, then you end up doing 10 years regulatory testing. But I believe that still out there are traditional processes that have been using fungi for so long that I think there is a window to show the EU authorities that mycelium is safe, especially all these things that were reported to be used before, like the EFSA was existing. So that's the secret. And I think in Europe we have to do that, because otherwise we only have fusarium from corn, right? Because they did their job before.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think the regulatory issues are extremely key. They may come into competitive processes for companies, so they may not want to collaborate on them. Like MyForest is using culinary grade mushroom mycelia, so there's not a big benefit to them to put resources into getting, let's say, a new strain of fusarium, like what Nature's Fine did, approved. At least they got it approved in the US. At the same time, I do think there are other issues that are pre-competitive that everybody in the field would benefit from. So, for example, on the fiber question. So in the United States, at least, you have intact fiber can be counted as dietary fiber on a nutrition label. And intact fiber includes from mushrooms, but it does not include from mycelium, not because they have some bias against mycelium, they just didn't even consider it. And so it's important that this field, all of the groups that are making or selling mycoprotein have an interest in the US recognizing that the fiber in mycelium is intact and should be able to count on a package as dietary fiber. And so that's the type of thing where I think there could be a lot of collaboration between the companies, since it would benefit every single one of us in the fungi protein space.
Thanks, Paul. And maybe if you could share in the chat the fungi association that you're a part of or you launched, and
Sure.
I'm sure people.
It's just fungiprotein.org. So go to fungiprotein.org and you can see which companies have formed this nascent trade association.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I want to be cognizant of time because we're almost halfway. We're a half an hour away from finishing, and I want to get to some of the audience Q&A. So we have a question from Sergio Rodriguez. And Sergio asks, given the growing interest in alt proteins, how do you see mycoprotein's environmental footprint compared to other plant-based alternatives? Are there any sustainability advantages? You can also, I think everyone here can also see Paul's response to Sergio. So if you can maybe touch on some of that, that would be fantastic.
I don't think I do have a response to Sergio, so I don't know where people were seeing it, but I don't think, unless I submitted something earlier, but Sergio, it's a great question. So first and foremost, let's just state the obvious, which is that no matter how you're growing mycoprotein, it's going to be dramatically superior to animal meat, right? Like you're just less land, et cetera, fewer greenhouse gas emissions. The question would be, dependent on whether you're talking about soy or pea or wheat, because these products all have a different footprint on their own. Like soy is way more productive than pea, for example. So you need a lot more acres of pea grown to get the same amount of protein as you do soy. Soy is just extremely productive. One soybean is usually about 40% protein, whereas one pea is about 20% protein. So even if you can grow the same number of peas and the same number of soybeans, you basically need double the land to make a pound of pea protein as you do a pound of soy protein. And so the bottom line to answer your question is I don't really know I haven't seen an LCA a life cycle analysis comparing mycoprotein to pea protein versus soy protein versus wheat protein. However, I have seen them compared to animal protein. They're always superior. And corn has done a lot on this. If you go to corn, if you search for corn's life cycle analysis, you can see that. Perhaps they do compare it to plant-based protein isolates. I'm not really sure, but it would be imperative to compare them not just to plants or to plant protein isolates, but to extruded plant protein isolates, because that's the real comparison. Mycoprotein is one reason it's so good is because you get that texture of meat. You don't get the texture of meat without extrusion of the soy protein or the pea protein. So you'd have to compare it that way. But if anybody else knows about other LCAs that do compare mycoprotein to extruded plant protein isolates, I'd love to hear about it, but I am not aware of that having been done. Maybe it has.
I've never seen it either. I'll add to this, or actually I'm reading some of the question and answers that have been given to Sergio. I'd add to this on how to compare growing mycoprotein versus growing plants. It's really about the substrate that you use or the media that you use to grow your mycoproteins. One thing that we're focusing on at Bosque is to essentially use some of the side stream from the plant-based industry themselves. So we're using some of the things that the plant-based industry does not want or has as a technical waste, and use that in order to ferment it and grow our mycelium. What's really interesting with mycoprotein as well is that depending on the strain, depending on the environmental parameters that you grow them in, you can really select a variety of different substrate to grow your mycoproteins from. So there's this real interest of circularity there at the very essence of the process. So again, I would be really happy to look at to deep dive into an LCA that compares these two. But I think each one of the companies represented today will have a very different LCA and very interesting one to really understand what are the impacts. But yeah, from the get-go, looking at even just the based substrate that you use, you can already imagine that it is more interesting, or at least it's complementary to the plant-based industry.
Yeah, I would like to add something. Since I joined the company, I always dreamed about a future of like a grid of small fermentation sites, like selecting the proper strain. Like Quentin and Paul mentioned, many strains with different performance, different textures and features. So I imagine like small plants, like tailor-made for the type of agri-food residues they have locally, and to be able to produce these high-quality proteins based on the local waste, whatever it is, right? And I remember that when I spoke with Alan, Libre CEO, he was talking about this same scenario, to have like small factories instead of having a huge one, distributing and transporting all this mycelium material, and instead of that, like having small plants. And I always remember a sci-fi writer, Isaac Asimov, well-known writer. He already, like 70 years ago, already seen that, and the planet, the capital planet of the Imperium, they had like a district only growing fungi and yeast, and it was called Mycogen. So I think, we really need that to recover all the waste that we generate.
Can I actually? Sorry, Anna. Please go ahead.
I was just wanted to add that, I mean, one of the impressive things is what you're saying now, like that you could use the food waste, like, and actually turn it into new food. Also considering, like, with climate change and like weather becoming more unpredictable, we still need food, and the fact that you can actually produce mycoprotein in such a short time span, it really, I think it's really incredible.
So if we're still talking about the same question, when I think about the advantages of what we're doing here at MyForest, it's indoors, so that makes it a lot easier. We're not subject to changes in weather, etc., which are horrible. The thing that I think about most though is it feels like the wrong question. Like, I don't want to say why we're better than pea protein or soy protein, like why we're better than raising pigs and cows and things like that. I mean, those are the things that are probably more important. We don't want to say bad things about our partners here in the world. So let's just talk about how much better we are than meat industry.
I totally agree with you, Jeff. I'm so glad you said that, because I was thinking it after I stopped speaking on that. And the reality is, like, if I heard a company using soy protein talking about why they were so much better than the companies using pea protein, I would think, that's bad. I don't like that. And I don't want to be suggesting that, we're better than the plant-based folks in that respect. What I am suggesting is there are lots of ways to recreate the meat experience. Plant proteins are one, mycoproteins are another, animal cell culture is another. These are all important parts of the protein solution. Just like wind, no, I'm not saying wind is better than solar, is better than geothermal. Like, these are all important parts of the clean energy solution. And so you're going to have companies that are focused on different ways of making mycoprotein. But as you pointed out very aptly, Jeff, and I'm so grateful you did, this is all better than raising animals. It's better for climate, better for land use, better for animal welfare. And so, if you look at there's only a few companies that have really scaled to a serious way. Like, for example, corn. Enough in Europe has also created a really spectacular factory as well. And I'm confident that any LCA of those full commercial scale mycoprotein facilities would blow animal slaughter out of the water when it comes to, actually literally out of the water, because the water footprint would be less. And so I think, if you look at those, that's the main thing to look at, because we're not trying to entice people to switch from Beyond Burgers to our product. We're trying to entice them to switch from the KFC chicken to the corn chicken, or whatever that replacement may be.
Can I actually jump in there, because I think you're touching on a very important point, Paul. So we're part of a system change, and what will unlock it is scale. And earlier you were mentioning about you were talking about the advantages, or not necessarily advantages, the differences between liquid scale, liquid state, solid state fermentation, and one of the unlocking factor there is this bioreactor capacity. And I'd be interested to hear about how you're tackling this challenge at the Better Meatco, working with liquid state fermentation.
It's definitely a challenge, but if you can afford the reactors, the benefits are enormous, because you can produce continuously a river of mycelium coming out 24/7. So instead of waiting a week or two to get a batch that may or may not be contaminated, you're going to have a river coming out. If you look at, you look at the public data available on corn's process, they're harvesting 24/7 for 33 days straight. So a month of fermentation where you have a river coming out at every single second of that reactor. And so, yes, like you can go with smaller reactors if you're able to boost your yields, but you get real big benefits to larger reactors, just in the same way that in most industries, building bigger gets your economies of scale down. There's some evidence as well that some of these bigger reactors can actually make more efficient products, not just because of the size and scale, but also because of some of the dynamics that happen within the reactor and so on. So I like this method because I think you can produce a lot of food in a very short amount of time. But I recognize the argument that people like Evan Bayer from Ecovative, which owns MyForest, are making. Like, his argument is you need to think outside of the bioreactor because it's just too CapEx intensive to do this. So, I'm all for both solid state and liquid fermentation. But if you have the money to be able to afford the reactors, I think that you end up winning in the long run, honestly.
Thanks.
Yeah, at least at short term, right? Because we still have a long way of research and strain discovery and process optimization. But yeah, I really think that larger the scale, closer to this cost effectiveness you are. And it's like you said, corn is showing it enough, is showing it, meat is showing it. So yeah, that's the key right now. Let's hope that in the future we can have more like processes like Bosque and MyForest. So yeah, I really hope that.
Jeff, did you want to add something to that?
No, sorry. He was waving at me.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I just want to start, we're going to probably start winding down in a moment. I'm going to take one more question from the audience, and then just a note to everyone in the audience, if we didn't get to your question, what I do at the end of these sessions is I'll collect the questions, I'll send them to these leaders, and we'll try to get those answers together in the write-up that I'll do after this event. We have a question from Patricia, and I think it's probably, I think Anna would maybe be the best person to answer this. But Patricia asks about opinions around meat-like products versus products not focused on imitating meat. At Tempty, as you said, you're not necessarily creating an analog. And yeah, just curious if you could speak to Patricia's thoughts around whether or not consumers' interests are changing around this, if this is targeting a specific consumer. It also may be a geography as well. So yeah, if you could just share a bit more about your approach around marketing a non-analog product.
I think like one of the important aspects is like what is actually being offered at the market. And in Denmark right now, like the meat replacements we have are usually like extruded soy, pea, and a lot of additives. At the end, the result still doesn't resemble, the texture of meat and taste. And what we see is like that for someone who is, eating meat or is trying to reduce meat, they don't see the point in eating these products if, they don't get the experience. That's what they like. Whereas there is the part of vegetarians and vegans who actually, after some time, of not eating meat products, you kind of get unused to the taste and the experience of meat, and some just seek for something different. Whereas right now we have tofu, very little tempeh, and it's not the high quality products. So we see that people actually struggle preparing them. It might be something cultural, that is just not the common. In Denmark, at least, it's salt and pepper is like the main seasonings. So people are not that used to maybe, having to prepare tofu, like marinating it. So in general, they need something that already will taste good if they're buying it in a supermarket. Yeah.
Thanks, Anna. Paul?
Yeah, I want to agree with Anna and expand on that and say, first, I'm quite happy to eat tofu and tempeh, and I eat them way more than I eat the other alternative meats. And I wish more people would do that. Sadly, tofu has been around for centuries, and it's a minuscule fraction of what the plant-based meat market is doing. So I wish that people were more into it. I do think that people want a meat-like experience, but I don't necessarily think it needs to be identical to meat, as Anna was saying. And if you look at the ways that animals have been displaced in our economy in the past, it has not been through mimicry. We whipped horses for thousands of years in order to get them to transport us. And we didn't stop because somebody created like a really great mechanical horse. We stopped because somebody created a car that was way better than a horse. We used to harpoon whales to light our homes, and we didn't stop because somebody created synthetic whale oil in a bioreactor. We stopped because kerosene was a much cheaper and more efficient way to light our homes. We used to live pluck geese for thousands of years in order to write letters. And then nobody stopped because they cared about geese or because a synthetic quill was invented. We stopped because metal fountain pens were invented, and they were superior to quills because you didn't have to stop and dip your quill into an inkwell and interrupt your thought while you were writing, and so on. And so every case where animals have been displaced in the economy, 100% of the time, it has not been through mimicry. It has been through something actually superior that people actively preferred, not just that it was the same, but that it was actually preferred. And so I think the task before all of us on this call and the others in the space, whether it's Enough or Corn or Nature's Find and so on, is to create foods that taste so good. Yeah, they're going to be meat-like. We've thousands of years humans have craved meat. They're going to be meat-like, but they don't need to perfectly mimic meat. I think that if they're so good that people would rather have them than meat, that is great. Now they might want it because they think it's cheaper or because it tastes better, or maybe it's a health benefit, but being superior to meat, I think, is better than a meat mimicry. And that's what happened in the alternative milk space. Nobody thinks that oat milk tastes exactly like cow's milk, but people like it. Same thing with soy milk and rice milk and all the other types of milk. It's not that they're perfect mimicries, but that market has done dramatically better than alternative meat has done. Dramatically better. Way bigger portion of the fluid milk market is plant-based than of the meat market being plant-based. And so even if we could just have the success that they in that industry have had, I think the world would be a dramatically better place. And so that wouldn't be through mimicry, but it does have to taste phenomenal and be cost effective in order to get there, I think.
Yeah, can I just add to that? Taste is going to be primary for all of the things that we do. Patricia's question is very interesting because there have been meat analogs around for a long time. When I was a teenager, there were these soy things that you could get and they looked like meat. And at the time I was vegetarian, and I was thinking to myself, why am I buying something that looks like meat if I don't want to eat meat anymore? It seemed really strange, but that was what was out there. And so people need a reference point. But, I'll tell you that as we're working on prototypes here at MyForest, I'm not going to say what they are, but like not everything has to look like a piece of bacon in order to have like a delicious product experience. So, I've sampled a lot of things that we've been working on, and I'm like, wow, that's really delicious. Like, how are we going to talk about this? Like, how will we get people to try it? Because once they do, they're going to love it. So like, it's just a matter of like making sure you don't have the wrong reference point for them as you're trying to introduce new products.
Yeah, I think like that's exactly like the experience you provide is set sort of by the expectation you put on it. And that's exactly why we're trying to communicate not mimicking meat, because we're doing, a clean label product that is a mix of like plant-based and mycoprotein without adding some additives or flavorings. We will not get to the taste, but with the texture will not be there without extrusion. So it's trade-offs, but we see that actually it really works because as long as the taste texture is familiar, it's actually bigger advantage sometimes than having, spectacular funky taste, which is accepted by very few.
Thanks, Anna. Thank you all so much for your time and for sharing and for just sharing this time together and giving us all something to feel really inspired by and also make us very hungry. For the last question, we're going to just close out. And if we could just do like a quick round table. I just want to know from each of you personally, it doesn't have to be your business perspective, but if you could solve one problem in the alternative protein field right now, what would it be? Quentin, we'll start with you and then we'll just round table.
Sure. I think maybe it's a little bit trivial, but if I could solve one thing, and it would be more in like the global food system, the subsidies that are given for animal meat, if those could simply be shared for plant-based, mycoprotein, cell-based, whatever, anything, just like the problem's there, it's understood, so how many IPCC reports do we need? It's just, that would be a simple thing to do. I mean, it would obviously have big repercussions. It would need to be a whole system change. It would impact a lot of jobs and so on. But I believe that this would be a great way forward.
Yes. Fantastic. Serji, I agree with you. Serji?
Yeah, actually would be amazing to be able to just with a test to show that this strain or this mycelium or this process with this substrate is safe and able to be provided as a food ingredient for the market. And something else that would love to be able to solve is, when you bring or you put a substrate to any fungi, it depends on the fungi, the way it degrades this substrate. So I would love to be able to use any agri-food to any strain. That would be awesome because locally we have like some ingredients and in other places others, right? So that would be awesome to be able to use straightforward all the agri-food side streams to grow our fungi.
Thanks, Serji. Jeff, what problem would you solve?
Yeah, I think we just need to make the things that we're working on and selling more affordable, more accessible, more acceptable. Like if we can remove the taste barrier, I keep saying taste, but that as the consumer, when I put my consumer hat on, like you don't want to have to qualify everything that you're trying to sell. It's really great for a plant-based thing. Like it should just be really, really great. So like making things affordable, making them accessible, and making them highly acceptable. That's what I want to do.
Thanks, Jeff. Paul?
My co-panelists have had so many great ideas that I agree with, and I would have said some of them. So all I'll say to try to come up with something novel here is the following. We have enormous government resources going into trying to create a cleaner energy system. Right now in the United States, we've got literally hundreds of billions of dollars going into these public projects for wind, solar, geothermal, and so on. We need the same for animal-free proteins. We should not be relying on the venture capital community to pay for massive CapEx projects. And it's a bad way to fund CapEx. It's the only way right now for the most part. Some companies in Europe, lucky enough, have received government support, but most of the companies in this space are basically relying on private investors to fund their operations, including major construction projects like what Jeff was talking about. And so if I could snap my fingers, I would love to see the subsidies taken away. I'd love to see us improve on taste and texture and price and all that. But we need support. This is as important as switching away from fossil fuels for climate and for the future of humanity. And as a result, I think it's incumbent upon all of us to make the case to public policymakers across the world that they ought to be investing in the infrastructure needed to create the future of protein so that we can sustainably feed humanity without tormenting animals and destroying the planet in the process.
Thank you,
Here, here.
Paul. Yeah, like Quentin said, how many more IPCC reports do we need, right? Like, no brainer. Anna, do you want to share what you would change? What probably?
Yeah, all great ideas. Yeah, so from my side, if I could add, it's also like to facilitate the transition in the public institutions. It's like one of the places where actually we can impact a lot what people are eating and teach people to newer ways of eating. Because right now there's not enough being done to actually nudge people to make a better choice. It's way too easy to stick to the price. Of course, it would be nice to be comparable to meat in a price, but there is a long way to come there. Yeah, so it would be really awesome to get more pat on the back from the government.
Yeah. Thank you so much, all of you. We are about 10 minutes from wrapping up the entire event, and that would only give everyone on the call about 10 minutes for the speed networking round. If that's something you're still interested in doing, I'm just going to extend it by another half an hour. You can find access to that on your home screen. It should be on the left, and it should have like a little handshake light up. I don't know if you see it or not, but it should be fairly easy to find. You can jump in there, and you'll be matched with other people on the call just to chat about what you've learned today, and really facilitate building community, sharing ideas, and etc. It was so lovely to have you all here today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all of the work that you do, and we'll be in touch and hopefully hear more from all of you soon.
Thank you so much.
Marlana,
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.